What's up, guys? Your boy Benny. There's a new horrible attack on Kamala Harris. Did you notice it this week? The right has an evil, racist, offensive attack on Kamala when we notice that she's used parts of her heritage to get certain things from certain people. And the epicenter of this horrible conspiracy theory from the right comes from none other than the right-wing news network itself, CNN, whose uber woke host, Don Lemon, happened to notice this, just a few years ago when it was still allowed.
Woman.
Okay, that's fine. I agree with that.
I
agree with that. But is she African American? No. But is she African American? There's a difference. There's nothing wrong with that. No one is trying to take anything away from her.
Let's go down into her lineage.
I think you're falling into a trap of that. All she had to do was say, "I am black, but I'm not African American." That's it.
Let me say this. I'm not falling in a trap. I'm not falling in. Let me finish. Hold on. I'm not falling into a trap by that. When she goes down her lineage, many Africans landed in Jamaica and all these other Caribbean islands. So she could indeed
Jamaica's
be
not America.
African American mixed with other races. But she is
Jamaica's not America.
But she is a black woman. She was born here in America. Okay, well let's go into Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was born in Canada.
His father was Cuban. This is not about Ted Cruz. You're changing the subject.
But you know what? We cannot. It was hypocrisy. I'm not changing the subject.
Yes, you are.
She's a black woman. I don't know what you want.
Cruz.
Okay.
Don Lemon's secretly based. What a useful idiot. This is great. This is great. This is just a few years ago on CNN. Them talking about Kamala Harris's heritage. Oh, how extreme. Oh, how terrifying. Oh, how horrifying that a person whose entire political career is based on identity politics, that you're allowed to talk about their identity. It's amazing, actually, from the party of white dudes for Harris and white women for Harris. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the protector of that party and those deeply fragile individuals, the people who platformed Don Lemon and his extremely racist and extremist viewpoints, well, they happened to ask J.D. Vance about this. Now, of course, the whole reason we're having this discussion is because President Trump brought it up when he was talking to the National Association of Black Journalists. And he said Kamala Harris, in his own way, he says, Kamala Harris is just a faker. She's fake. She says whatever needs to be said, and she does whatever she needs to do, and she panders to audiences, which she does, in order to get what she wants. And that's what President Trump was saying. And that's actually pretty commonplace for politics. That is politics. It is a criticism of people like Kamala, who's extremely transactional, but not a criticism of Donald Trump, who's been the same guy since he was doing interviews with Oprah in like the 1980s, toying with the presidential run. Like, Trump's been the same dude. It's just back then he would have run as a Democrat and he'd be king of the world. Now he's running with J.D. Vance for the Republican nomination. And of course he's Orange Man and Orange Man bad. J.D. Vance in a very different way answered this question when asked. And man, we think he knocked it out of the park. J.D. Vance obliterates CNN reporter trying to race bait about Kamala Harris. Let's go.
His comments yesterday to the National Association of Black Journalists, where he said that Vice President Harris is, quote, all of a sudden black. As a father of 3 biracial children, did those comments give you pause at all?
They don't give me pause at all. Look, all he said is that Kamala Harris is a chameleon. She goes to Georgia 2 days ago. She was raised in Canada. She puts on a fake Southern accent. She is everything to everybody, and she pretends to be somebody different depending on which audience she's in front of. I think it's totally reasonable for the president to call that out, and that's all he did. I mean, look, she's running as a tough-on-crime prosecutor, even though she implemented open border policies. She's saying that she wants to support the police, yet she wanted to defund the police just 3 years ago. It's totally reasonable to call out the fact that she pretends to be somebody different depending on the audience she's talking to.
Bingo. Bingo. So what we've been saying. Now, I've been saying don't play the identity politics game. And I'll continue to say that. Not a wise move. The entire Democrat Party is all they have. All they have is identity politics and fomenting about the color of people's skin. I mean, it's deeply regressive and it's stupid, right? But nonetheless, this is a beautiful answer that the point is that she is a chameleon and she is somebody who's fake. The only thing that's real is that she's Commie Kamala. She is a communist. J.D. Vance's colleague in the Senate, Tom Cotton, she's giving a master class in how to actually reverse this question and ask, oh, wait a second. So Kamala Harris, like, why was she so happy to serve with Joe Biden, who she called a racist and a segregationist? If you're so concerned about these things, then why don't you ask her those questions? Beautiful. Go.
How does her changing her views on her policy justify having the Republican nominee questioning her race? Does that increase or decrease your party's chances of winning in November?
Well, Caitlyn, you haven't had that conversation with Kamala Harris because she's been hiding out.
I want to have this conversation with you,
Senator.
Senator.
Just like Joe Biden hid out before her. And my point is, when are you and the rest of the media going to demand that Kamala Harris come out and answer questions in an unscripted format about where she stands for this country, as opposed to continuing to focus on what Donald Trump said today? 4 years ago, Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for him, you ain't black. Could you imagine a more insulting comment? Joe Biden is presuming to judge the political views of 1/8 of our fellow citizens based on their skin color. Did you ever ask Kamala Harris to condemn his remarks?
There are
Did you ever ask him or ask her if that was racist?
This is a question. You're a Republican senator, so I want to ask you about the Republican nominee.
Did you ask Kamala Harris? Caitlyn, did you ask Kamala Harris why she's willing to serve as vice president for a man she essentially called racist and a segregationist? Have you or anyone else in the media asked Kamala Harris those questions, Caitlyn?
Senator, trust me, I covered the Biden-Harris White House. We obviously have asked for her to come on. But my question is for you about this. Donald Trump's pick for VP once questioned whether he was America's Hitler.
Well done, Senator. We were able to speak with Hary Dylan, who's just an awesome lawyer, Republican National Committee woman. She's somebody who works for President Trump and his legal team. And she's somebody who is very familiar with Kamala Harris, living in San Francisco, and has sued Kamala Harris. She had this to say about Kamala's transactional, very fake, very cringy nature.
I'll give you an example. She would come into a South Asian Bar Association meeting and she'd be like, namaste, and, like pander to that group. But a lot of us, actually, most of my friends in that association are liberal. We would comment on the fact that she only seemed to be Indian, actually, when she was asking for money from Indian Americans. And then she would abandon that. She did nothing for my client, who was Indian American, in the civil rights case. She had zero record of advancing anything having to do with our community when she had power. So I think it's curious that people continue to fawn over her as that kind of a candidate. And so I think she's just she's a chameleon, and that's a fair criticism of her. She's taken on whatever mantle can help her get ahead. I mean, you see this ludicrous accent that she's put on it. By the way, I grew up in rural North Carolina. I actually grew up in a segregated town in rural North Carolina in the 1970s. And, she ain't from rural South, and she is not part of that persona. They don't talk like that in Jamaica, where her family really is from. And so I think it's a distraction, though. I completely agree with Vivek. The hyphenated American thing is so passé. America is a beautiful country, and every single American deserves civil rights, equal protection, due process, and predictability. And President Trump, when he talked at the RNC convention about running to be the president of all Americans, that's what I want to hear. And Kamala Harris and her little flacks out there have some nerve criticizing any discussion of race when she's the one who brings it up. She's the one who panders on it. She's the one who got to her position explicitly because of it. She's the one today, this week, she has been segregating her supporters into gender and race categories. White men for Harris, white women for Harris. My goodness, it's 2024. Who does that? It's so cringe. And so I think it's fair to criticize her on that, but ultimately, we as Republicans have to move the needle of the voters. And specifically, our focus needs to be getting those apathetic Americans out there who don't vote, our neighbors who own guns, our neighbors who own businesses, our neighbors who create jobs, our neighbors who work the factory lines. We got to get those people to take a day off or take a few hours off, or if they have early voting in their state, get their ballot from them. Make sure their vote counts, because America as we know it is going to be over if Marxist Kamala Harris, deconstructionist of the law, of civil rights, of everything you know and hold dear, becomes our president. It is game over for this country. I don't know how we're going to come back from that.
And of course, in conclusion, probably our favorite clip of the week, Vivek Ramaswamy saying many Indian Americans in the U.S. are somewhat offended that Kamala Harris suddenly cast aside her Indian heritage. She wore that when it was convenient, very much reflecting what Harmeet had to say. Let's go.
All right. Vivek, I want to give you a chance to react to that. No doubt it's going to get attention. It already is.
Yeah, so look, on a very personal level, my parents were immigrants to this country, legal immigrants from southern India. Very same part of India that her mother also immigrated from. I think it's a hard fact, Martha, it's just a fact, whether you like it or not, that many Indian Americans in the United States are indeed somewhat offended by the way Kamala has suddenly cast aside the Indian American side of her identity. She leaned into it when she ran for office in California. Big Asian American and Indian American population. So she wore that when it was convenient. She's wearing a different identity now when it's politically convenient on a national stage. Personally, I don't think we should be relying on these ethnic identities at all. We're actually American. And the problem is when you're Kamala Harris and you actually do lean into your identity politics, then you open the door to that type of criticism. But if you ask me, that shouldn't be how this election is decided one way or another. It should be decided on our own identity as Americans and what our vision is for the future of the country. And the number one thing missing in Kamala Harris's candidacy is that she lacks that vision for the country. That's what we got to focus on.